This is Terrible Parables, a podcast of Mockingbird Ministries, in which a Bible scholar, a pastor, and an anxious Christian look for some good news and passages of Scripture that are difficult, frightening, or particularly, well, terrible. I'm your host, Cali, and in a little bit I'll be joined by my co-hosts, Todd Brewer and Bryan. Join us as we find that sometimes the spooky things that go bump in the night are just figments of our imaginations. From Matthew 25, Jesus said, "For it is as if a man going on a journey summoned his slaves and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. The one who had received the 5 talents went off at once and traded with them, and made 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had the 2 talents made 2 more talents. But the one who had received the 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. Then the one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, saying, 'Master, you handed over to me 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master.' And the one with the 2 talents also came forward, saying, 'Master, you handed over to me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master.' Then the one who had received the 1 talent also came forward, saying, 'Master, I knew you were a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you did not scatter seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours.' But his master replied, 'You wicked and lazy slave, you knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow, and gather where I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and on my return I would have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one with the 10 talents. For to all those who have, more will be given, and they will have in abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. As for this worthless slave, throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth."
Oh, I'll tell you what. I will tell you why this parable is so terrible. I will take us there. This is one of my parables. Again, I have very, very few things irk me, but one of the things that really irks me is this parable in particular. If I had a nickel for every time I've heard a pastor say something about how the talents of this parable are the talents that you have in your real life. Oh. And how the talents of this parable are about sort of how God made you, and if you don't use your spiritual gifts the right way, like, I hate it so much. It's wrong. It's the wrong interpretation. I'm getting on my soapbox. I'm going to tell the world. Anytime you hear a pastor say about this parable that the talents are about your talents, it's awful. And what ends up happening is the whole thing becomes this guilt trip about how you need to learn your spiritual gifts and you need to use your talents for God. And are you using your talents for God, or are you just burying them in the ground like the guy in the parable? And I think what ends up happening is this becomes a parable in which what is originally meant is obscured by this wider sense in the parable that we can use this parable to get people to volunteer more at church. We can get them to do more evangelism or sign up for the soup kitchen or, be ushers during service. And it's often paired with...
it takes a lot of talent to be an usher.
It does take a lot of talent to be an usher. I once read a church growth manual that said you want your most attractive young people to be your ushers because that's the first thing people see when they come to your church. Isn't that crazy?
A church manual said this?
A church growth thing. Anyway.
That's not a talent either. That's just a God-given thing that you
Well, you use it to be an usher,
that's just
right?
being blessed.
But then what happens is we turn it into the next step is you get a spiritual gift inventory or you get like an Enneagram test or a
I remember taking
Myers
the spiritual
Briggs.
gift inventory.
Right.
Yeah.
I've forgotten about that. I haven't taken
I don't know what my gifts are anymore. Uh-oh.
Yeah. I remember taking my test and thinking, that's wrong. I was like, I was given, you were blessed with the gift of discernment. And I was like, no, that's not true.
So you discerned that it was not the right thing
thereby
for you?
proving it to be true.
Yeah.
I don't think that.
Yeah, Todd.
Yeah.
Just accept it.
Yeah.
Accept your fate.
So for those of you who didn't grow up in like the evangelical milieu, right? The Bible talks about different gifts and different offices that people have in the church. And for a while there, and I think they still maybe in some churches, they have these inventories where you're going to like look up and say, okay, well, am I like a teacher or an evangelist or a prophet or an administrator? And it's sort of become an evangelical version of, again, like the Myers-Briggs or the Enneagram or whatever your favorite personality test.
Right. It's just a Christian version of like a Charles Taylor ethics of authenticity.
It very much is.
That there is a thing about you which is unique and special that you have to then live in accordance with. There's an ethical mandate to your identity that you have to fulfill.
And that's the moral valence that makes this parable so terrible. If you're not your authentic, true self in the service of Jesus, then you've wasted your life. You've wasted the life that God gave you. And now you're just going to go to hell for it.
So you hid your light under a bushel.
That's a great, to use one of Jesus's other teachings, exactly what they would say.
Look at you doing intertextual readings.
Wow. I'm so
Kelly,
nice.
you have grown so much since season 1.
Thank
it's so
you.
great.
I haven't grown in height, but perhaps in other things. So that's very exciting.
Yeah. So that's why I think this parable is so terrible. I mean, it's just people go to talents and they immediately think talents, like gifts,
skills.
abilities, skills.
Right.
And that couldn't be further from the truth of what the actual talents are in the reading.
What is an actual talent then? Can we remind everyone, as in everyone, I mean me? Can we?
Well, let's round out. Do we have any other reasons why this parable we think is so terrible?
Well, I just think it creates this kind of burden. It's very much a burden of thou shalt do this. And if you don't, Jesus lays it on thick. There's like weeping and gnashing of teeth and the outer darkness, like the stakes are high. Mm-hmm. So if your talent is something that, you have to be true to as your essential true self, and you have to know what that is. I mean, do I know myself? Do you know yourselves? So much so that you're willing to stake your eternal destiny upon that thing. Like, that's a big deal.
And there's no accounting for, the you that you are at the age 22 when you're, sort of growing into adulthood. Like, you're not the same person that you are by age 38, 68, all growing up. Like, you change, and things that you love about yourself change. And, so that sense of you have to get this right or else, it's oppressive, and it's designed to, that interpretation causes anxiety where it doesn't need to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what makes this parable actually not so terrible?
So there's two things. The first, back to the talents.
Yeah.
So this parable and how it's been misinterpreted is a really good example. It's actually a quintessential example of what's called the etymology fallacy. So etymology is simply is the way of talking about how words are, where they come from.
Okay.
And so a lot of people think that if you can get down to this kind of original substrata of a meaning of a word, that it tells you something. Like how the later usage and earlier usage are all kind of exist in this kind of continuum. And so a good example of an etymology fallacy is the Greek word ekklesia, which is, we translate that as just church,
Right.
often. But ekklesia is a compound word, which in Greek, which literally means the called out. And so a lot of pastors will make hay over the fact that, the church is the called out ones, as if the sort of the word itself, in Greek must mean called out. So,
Like called out of the world.
Called out of the world.
God has called us out, to be different or something like that. Yeah.
Right. When really it just means assembly.
Okay.
In the Septuagint and in the New Testament, so church. Yeah. So talent is the English word for talent actually goes back to this parable.
Yeah, that's right.
It goes back to the Greek. But what it means in the Greek is not talent as in skills, but rather it's a sum of money.
Okay.
So as we talked about in first season
1 comes back again.
it's a huge sum of money. It's like 20 years worth of wages for a common laborer.
Okay.
You can go back to season 1 and listen to our extended discursus on a talent if you want to. We won't bore you with it here, but it's enough to say that the point is he's giving very large sums of money to his servants, the master is. And the idea is they're supposed to take care of this for him, to manage it and do with it for him while he's away. And that's has nothing to do with skills, behaviors, giftedness, authenticity. It's like, hey, I'm going out. Run the store for me while I'm away is a closer analogy to what we're talking about.
Do people ever use this passage to talk about like stewardship of money, of how you should be
almost certainly
good with your money?
So this passage shows up reliably in the Revised Common Lectionary. So the big thing that tells all the churches of a certain kind which readings will happen which week, they always somehow mysteriously occur at the very end of the year, just before Advent kicks in. And they're presupposing that all of these churches are setting their budgets for the next year. So they're going to have a lot of, this is one of like 3 or 4 that just smashes people over the head of how are you using your money? Maybe you should give it to God.
But it comes right before Advent?
It comes right before Advent.
So it almost comes like after like Black Friday and
it's a little bit before that, but it's definitely while people are shopping for Christmas gifts.
Yeah, and spending all of their money that they shouldn't be spending.
And theoretically balancing their checkbook in light of, American tax issues, right? At least here in the States, that's the timing of it here in the States.
Yeah. So, Bryan, why is this not as terrible?
Well, here's the thing. The people will try to say that this is an issue of stewardship or an issue of talents, et cetera, the other. But if you notice, the thing that sets the master off is the characterization that he is a harsh, hard person, right? Like that's really the thing about this parable that is the turning point. Up until that point, we get the patterns, we get the sort of faithfulness, welcome to enter into the joy of my kingdom. But then the third servant, the third slave, the third manager of the money says, I know you to be a hard person, right? And he says, you sow where you do not you reap where you do not sow. He goes on to say what is ultimately kind of some offensive things about the master that the other two clearly don't experience. Like they have no problem with it.
And is the master supposed to be God? Like,
I think we're getting to that. Yeah. Okay. Like in the parable here, there's a sense where he's almost angry and bitter and resentful towards the master. And so what does he do? He buries it in the ground. It's a way of him basically saying, you asked me to take care of this for you while I'm away and manage it, right? And I did nothing. I just did nothing at all while you were gone with it.
Well, I kept it safe.
he kept it safe is what he says.
Yeah.
But like, that's not what the request was. It was to manage it and to sort of work with it, right? It's a very interesting thing to look at this third servant and see just how radically different he is in his disposition of the master. And that's what inspires him to do things differently, much to the master's frustration and anger.
Yeah. So the master goes to the first three and is like, hey, can you do this for me? And they say, sure. And they do it. The fourth one, the master says, hey, can you do this? And his response is, I think you're a terrible boss. I'm deathly afraid that I'm going to get fired. I really don't want to screw this up. So I'm going to do the thing with least amount of risk and bury it in the ground and go with that and see how that works.
So is the parable like less so about how the person is like stewarding or what they're doing with the money, and more so how they perceive the master to be?
I think so. I think that's it. Okay. That's the key turning point here. It's the disposition of this guy towards the master that is ultimately, the frustrating part. And I think if you look, right, how does the master respond? And he says like, oh, so you think I'm such a hard guy, huh? Like, is that what you really think? Then you should have done this instead. But the point here is that the thing that the servant gets wrong and he's receiving judgment for is his mischaracterization of the master.
Yeah, and it's in that way illustrative of what we believe about God informs so much.
Yeah.
So if we believe that God is a harsh person, the natural response is fear, and that fear then translates into hedging bets, not taking risks, clamming up,
hiding
away. It's arresting, and so. But if you think if you love God, any number of other possibilities, then how you respond or how your sort of behavior follows from that.
Yeah.
And so a lot of places put the cart before the horse, and they lead with behavior rather than affect or what one believes about God to be true.
Yeah. Of who God is, that he's merciful.
Right. And they use this parable as along those lines.
Yeah.
So, but if you put it in its proper order, affect translates into action.
Okay.
Or trust translates into faithfulness.
And I realized I should have asked this earlier, but I had a question about one of the verses of the for to all those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. That just feels like it directly contradicts Jesus for the lowly and the lost and the lonely. So I don't know if either of you can explain maybe what that verse means, or I don't know if I'm taking it the wrong way, but
I'll throw in there just to say, I do think in this parable, one of my favorite movies is Clue, right? The Clue movie. And the great line from that movie is, communism was a red herring. Anybody, right? I do think the money situation.
I have not seen Clue.
I have not.
Really?
I've played the game.
Oh, heartbreaking. My goodness. It is fantastic. It's
and I was just part of a murder mystery dinner party.
Did you?
And everyone said, have you not seen Clue? And they were in their fake accents.
And what do they all say? Communism was a red herring. It's a great line. But I think in this, there's so much people get caught up in when it comes to this question of money and talents. People will go to great lengths to talk about the bank and usury, right? And these questions of charging interest and what was permitted and not permitted in Jewish law. I don't think you need any of that in this text. I think really the question is how you understand God, right? It impacts how you believe, how you behave, how you treat others. And so coming at this parable instead and saying, okay, well, if that's the crux of this parable, then the other things are just the set dressing, the setup for that particular emotionally charged surprise to happen, where he says, actually, I think you're a jerk. and I'm really kind of mad and resentful about how you do business. So I did the minimum and tried to keep it safe, but I really am not interested in making any money for you, or that sort of thing. And so I do think the money in this passage it tends to be part of the setup and not the punchline. The punchline is, how do you understand the master?
Yeah. And when it comes to parables, I feel like knowing the punchline is like very important.
Right.
Because that is often misinterpreted.
Yes.
At this point, I think it's helpful to read from Robert Farrar Capon and what he has to say about this parable.
I think so.
We haven't yet done so in the podcast.
Yeah. Which is actually like, that's a win for us. We haven't done it.
I mean, we haven't done it.
So, but maybe we should.
You know,
we should do it right now.
Capon is always brilliant, but sometimes he's hit or miss.
Hey,
and this is a hit.
Todd, the time is now.
Oh, sorry.
It's today.
Urgency.
It's today, not
if
tomorrow.
If I don't do so, the book will be taken away from me.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll take it away from you.
So here's what Capon says.
Real quick, for those who don't know, this is a book that Robert Farrar Capon composed. It's called Parables of Kingdom, Grace, and Judgment. And this is one of his thicker, more thorough books about the parables of Jesus. And it's a book that, if you've been in Mockingbird circles for a while, we really like it. And there's some really incredible insights in this book. Sometimes, I tell people that Capon is like a major league slugger. Sometimes he whiffs, but when he connects, it's a home run. And
that's a good way of putting it.
And in this book, he connects a lot. And so it's really, really worth, if you haven't had a chance to experience anything from this book, Todd will give you a quick.
If there are any Capon devotees out there, please do not send us hate mail for damning him with faint praise.
Well, it wasn't faint praise. I mean, I don't agree. It's like I don't agree with everything Luther says either. But like, there's a sense where this is an incredible book. And
no one bats 1,000, Bryan.
No one bats 1,000. But Capon, he's pretty good. You want him on your team. How about that?
All right. With all that prelude, here we go. He says, "We spend our lives invoking upon ourselves imagined necessities, creating God in the image of our own fears. And all the while, he's beating us over the head with the balloon of grace and the styrofoam baseball bat of a vindicating judgment. The history of salvation is slapstick all the way, right up to and including the end. It's the Three Stooges working only for laughs. God isn't trying to hurt anyone. He's not even mad at anyone. There are no lengths to which he won't go to prove there are no restrictions on the joy he wants to share with us. If you were never afraid of Larry, Curly, or Moe, you have no fear of the Trinity either."
Oh.
The Trinity is the Three Stooges.
Wow. I've never heard
Capon.
that before.
only Capon could liken, yes.
Also, I love that Capon inadvertently continued the baseball metaphors that we have going on.
Yeah, the styrofoam bat.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's really what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And
You were
it's funny
planning ahead.
'cause,
I'm good with segues.
a lot of folks, when they come to this parable, what's the one thing we wish was in this parable? We wish that in this parable, there was a guy who went out with his talents, and he maybe got 4 talents. And he went out with his 4 talents, but he screwed up and he came back with 2. And he goes to the master and said, "Master, I'm sorry. I did my best. Here's, you gave me 4. I came back with 2. And we would love to see what the master responds, right? Because, but to do that, right? To ask that question is to miss the point, because that's not the point of the parable. The point of the parable is it's how we understand God, right? And so if you understand God as loving, caring, wanting you, there is no end to the joy, as Capon says, that he has in store for you, then you don't have to worry about those questions, because you already know the answer, which is that it doesn't matter.
That's really good news.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes texts point beyond themselves when it comes to how to preach them. And this is very much why, I don't know if this is a trend anymore, but in seminary, we learned all about expository preaching, which is just preaching what the text says, and that's it. And so you were to go line by line, verse by verse, and it's mostly teaching. You're supposed to sort of explain what the text means, and that was the end of, and the sort of goal of preaching.
And that was like the sermon.
That was the sermon. Like you get to the explanation of the final verse and you go, amen. And that's it. But versus actual proclamatory preaching, which especially as understood by Luther and so many of the reformers, is the text is meant to serve the proclamation of who God is and what he's done.
Yeah.
The text is instrumental.
The text is a bridge to get you to the gospel.
Right.
And it's meant to take you somewhere. It's not to be it's just own thing for you to sort of sit under and there's more to it than just education.
Yeah,
right?
the text isn't self-referential. It's not meant to be an end unto itself.
It's not about Christian application. So I have an article for you two. It's by Olga Kazan for The Atlantic, and it's entitled "The Anxiety of Spending Money You Definitely Have." She starts off by telling a story about a man who earns hundreds of thousands of dollars each year, who had panic attacks after he spent money on a new car. A study by a University of Michigan marketing professor would put this man into a category of people called tightwads. Have you ever heard of that phrase?
I mean,
I might be a tightwad.
Brian is a tightwad.
Yes.
Brian was just gloating earlier about how cheaply he bought his car for.
Yes, it's true. So, I'm a tightwad.
All right.
Guilty as charged.
Well, she says, tightwads are people who have trouble spending their money. In various studies that he's conducted, Rick has found that tightwads do not scrimp because they lack money. They are not any poorer than spendthrifts, people who overspend. Tightwads actually have better credit scores and more money in savings, perhaps because they never spend it. Instead, they're afraid to spend money that they do have. Tightwads' issues reveal how our financial choices can be more psychological than economic. If you feel anxiety about your finances, it may not be relieved by making more money. Irrational stinginess is a strange problem to have, akin to complaining about being too beautiful. In a society with so much income inequality, it's obviously better to be well off and anxious than to be poor and desperate. But the tightwads I spoke with have very real anxiety, panic, guilt, stress over their financial situation, even though there's no real reason for them to worry. They drag around a phantom limb of poverty, burdened with a sneaking sense that something isn't right, no matter what their bank account says. Our spending, in some cases, is tied with our identities, Abigail Sussman, a marketing professor at the University of Chicago, told me. And so if I think of myself as somebody who doesn't splurge on things, spending on something like a new couch that maybe would make my life more comfortable could interfere with my perception of my own identity.
In what way are tightwads different from misers? Because
what are misers?
So misers are people who don't spend money because the pile of Scrooge McDuck, the pile of money in their vault is what gives them security. Mm-hmm. So they don't ever spend it.
Okay.
So tightwads,
that would be a tightwad then.
That would be a tightwad?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
so the
least,
Scrooge McDucks of the world.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I think the difference is Scrooge McDuck will spend the money. I think the tightwad is someone, what stuck out with me is the fear, right? Mm-hmm. It's the fear, even though they have the money, that if they spend it, then they'll be impoverished again or impoverished at all. And what I took away is it's really interesting, right? Because in the same way, this text is not about the money. Mm-hmm. It's about the fear of the master or the anger towards the master. And what this is sort of saying in the same way is it's not about the money, it's about the fear. Mm-hmm. It's about the fear of losing it, the fear of poverty.
The fear of not being secure.
The fear of not being secure, right? And so when you may have a fully funded, vested 401k, a reliable vehicle or transportation, you've got your toe in home ownership, and like by all accounts, by all financial wisdom, you are making it. But like you sit there and you're thinking to yourself, like, I got to go to the Goodwill.
Like Bryan is talking about himself again.
A little bit. Like I identify with this because I have a lot of anxieties about money, and I think
everyone does.
I mean, if I need a new pair of shoes, it's one of those things where I sort of clock it and say, I can't do it now. I need more time. I mean, I could get a new pair of shoes now if I needed to, but that internal sense of, what's the word I want to use? That internal sense of, this, this internal sense of spending is a threat to my safety and security is, it's what leads to people being penny wise and pound foolish, right? It's what leads to people who, this wider sense of, money's not enough. I need more. I just relate to that, and I relate to it this parable because that fear is what leads me to even more financial. It leads to financial mismanagement, and it leads to not being comfortable, not being. My wife and I talk about.
How does fear lead to financial mismanagement?
I think for me, I know I don't want to tell all of our dear viewers about my financial situation here, right? But this sense of
I want dollars and cents, please.
I'm not going to give you dollars and cents.
I want receipts.
I'm trying to think
I
here.
respect your privacy, Bryan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cali is the only person in the world who respects Bryan's privacy. His phone company doesn't respect it. His water company doesn't respect it. His internet service provider definitely doesn't respect it.
Right. Think of somebody who's so scared of banks, right, that they just stuff all the money under their mattress.
Yeah.
That was a common practice, for folks who grew up in the Great Depression, and they didn't trust banks because of bank runs and before the FDIC came around. I think you can, out of fear, make poor financial decisions that come back to you in the future that you will wish you had done different on because you were afraid when you didn't need to be.
And it's also not just fear, it's the fact that too, our identity is wrapped up in how much money we spend or don't spend. I want to identify as someone who is a really great budgeter or someone that doesn't overspend, even though I can't identify as that person. But we want to, we want to brag about that.
You want to brag about how you're a budgeter?
Some people do. I'm not a budgeter though, so I can't brag about
That's like a whole world on social media, right? People who are financial influencers who brag about budgeting and brag about, using the envelope system and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't budget at all, but that's because anytime I make any purchase over $50, it's about my threshold. I feel a little bit of pain when I click. Buy.
Physical pain or emotional pain, both.
Yeah, emotional angst about it, and then it goes away.
Yeah.
Usually when the thing arrives.
Yeah, it's called dopamine.
Right. but you're meant to have a bit of dopamine when you click on it.
Yeah, but you have anxiety
you get the confirmation. Right. Yeah, I get a little bit of anxiety about it. Not so much that it's arresting, but just enough that it keeps me away from buying more. Lots and lots of things. Yeah.
Wow.
So, but $50 is
some might say that's the Holy Spirit at work.
No way. Not a chance.
But I think
if it is, it's the hidden left hand of God that's smacking me over the head just a little bit.
But there's that sense, when you look at this parable, right? The issue is not the money. And so the problem, for folks who are in the middle of this article here, who would be the quote unquote tightwads, right? The issue is not better money habits. It's addressing the underlying fear. And that's why I think this is such a great thing to read with this parable.
Yeah.
Because the issue here is not the better management of your talents.
Yeah.
Whatever that means.
It's not about the money.
It's not about your spiritual gifts. It's not about, becoming a volunteer for the church. It's about how do we help people become less afraid of God. And out of that release from the fear and the anger, then people will begin to actually, quote unquote, manage their talents, whatever that means. That's where we begin to see people entering into the joy of their master.
Bryan, can we hear your stewardship pitch? What does that sound like?
I got in trouble once because I was a seminarian and I was volunteering in a church. And the pastor of that church asked me to write for their newsletter a little stewardship pitch and why people should give to the church. And I went through and gave a long theological treatise about how the 10% tithe of the law of Moses does not apply to Christians because the law of Moses has been rendered obsolete. So you don't have to give 10%. But instead,
You did this in seminary?
yeah, I did. I was a seminarian. What a punk.
Yeah.
And I said then I said what the New Testament says is that your whole life belongs to God. And it's not just 10% of your money that belongs to God. All your money belongs to God. And so I wrote this little thing, and the pastor said, Bryan, you're probably right. At our church, we shoot for 10%. So just help me get the 10%.
I feel
Don't crap on the 10%, please.
Yeah.
And I was like, fair enough. I'm a team player. Like, we'll talk about 10%.
yeah.
From his perspective, he's like the employee at a theme park. You must be this tall to ride the ride.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
You just took the ruler away, and now there's kids who are like babies on the ride.
Chaos.
Yeah, like me,
Chaos.
I'd be able to go on all the
Pandemonium,
rides.
He's
cats
like,
and dogs.
Bryan, we need that first use of law,
Yeah,
please.
yeah.
Or else the wheels will come off.
Yeah.
But it might actually be the case that if you lead with fear or some sense of obligation before God, that people give less.
I would give more if I read your article. I'd probably give 20%.
Tell your pastor and I'll send him a copy. Somewhere in my Google Docs.
I will.
20%.
Again, with this parable, I still think the money is a side issue.
Yeah.
I think the issue is what's your understanding of God? Mm-hmm. And the more you understand God to be the sort of loving, caring, joy giver that he is, the more likely you are to not have a sort of allergic reaction when he says, take care of the talents, metaphorically speaking. There's more here to this parable about your attitude towards God, and how that becomes the dividing line between entering the joy in the Master's kingdom and God's judgment at the end.
Thank you for listening to Terrible Parables. You can find us on the web at ember.com. Audio production for Terrible Parables is provided by TJ Hester. Please leave us a rating or review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. We hope you've had a not so terrible time.